All right, let's go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gringo Show. Thanks for joining us as we esperando con alfileres y agujas. That's right, waiting on pins and needles for the final outcome of the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Will it be Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or will they just give the presidency to Kanye West, where the Kardashian family moves into the White House and creates a new reality TV show where Kim is Secretary of Fashion, Khloe Secretary of Instagram, and whomever is whomever, because I don't know anything about them. But I understand if you are not from the US, or even if you are from the US, and like so many people don't really care too much about politics or even geography. After I was chatting with an American in a bar in Cancun, she asked me where I lived. I told her Mexico City, and she said, well, why don't you just go home tonight? And I was like, why are you staying in a hotel? And I was thinking that like Cancun is either in or next to Mexico City. I didn't even dare to correct Melissa from Wichita, Kansas. I just let her be. But the election is still incredibly close. Joe Biden is only a few electoral votes away from becoming the 46th president of the United States. Let's take a look at the current map. And please remember that this is changing every minute and every hour. And this map has Arizona going for Biden, but there are a number of news organizations that have not called Arizona for Biden yet. But we have Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. There are only a few states to be called. And I will say, I'm not going to gloat. I'm not going to gloat. Okay, I'm going to gloat. The Gringo Show map that I predicted last week is almost the same. I missed Iowa. There you go. I missed Iowa. Nobody really cares about Iowa unless you've invested in corn. And now possibly Georgia, but we'll see. Anyway, let me run down for you what is happening or what has happened so you know the details and just repeat it at your next dinner or work Zoom call to impress your colleagues and friends. So this election has been a peculiar one due to our great friend COVID, because he's the guy who decides to walk into a perfectly calm party wasted and ruins the night for everybody. COVID, don't pour that rum and coke on the floor. Put yourself together. Stop being the center of attention, COVID. So the insanity that is the U.S. electoral system is that every state has their own rules. Yes, 50 different policies, many different types of voting machines and counting methods. It's fucking nuts. Most states responded to the pandemic by allowing people to vote without going to the polls, either via a drop box or submitting their ballot in the mail, and millions of people did it. But it gets more complicated. Each state has their own rules about when these ballots would be opened. Some were tallied days before the election, and some, like our good friends in the great state of Pennsylvania, known for cracked bells, cheesesteaks, and of course the Steelers, which have the people in Mexico are fans of, were prohibited from starting the count of these ballots until election day. Upwards of 3 million mail-in ballots were cast in that state, which is a lot. Each ballot has to be opened, counted, and verified, and the states are not used to this many. It gets better. Each state has its own rules for how long ballots can be received by their elections department after the election. For example, some states, if the ballot was not in the hands of the elections department by election day, then the vote would not be accepted. But in places like Pennsylvania, the ballot must be postmarked by election day, but can be received up to 3 days after. So technically, if the ballots still arrive today, they could be accepted for counting. In normal election years, the amount of absentee or mail-in ballots were pretty insignificant. Voters would line up on an election day, touch a screen or scan a ballot, and when the polls close, the election officials simply flip a switch and find out how many votes were counted, report them, and then news agencies like the Associated Press, NBC, or the Gringo Show, wink, wink, just kidding, have people they hired to look at the data. Look at the surveys they do outside the polls, and that's called exit polling, and then make a projection of which candidate will win that particular state. Then, if they project that the candidate gets enough votes from the Electoral College, they will project the winner of the election. As of 9 p.m. Thursday night, this has not happened yet. In many past elections, Americans knew who their president would be before going to bed. The news organizations are now extremely careful about how and when they project the winner because they've screwed it up in the past. Most famously in 2000, when they called Al Gore the winner of Florida, then Bush, then they were like, we have no idea. And then that dragged on through the courts into December until the Supreme Court stopped additional counting and gave the presidency to George W. Bush. And we know how that one turned out. So this is what is happening. But let's go back a bit because it seems that people have anticipated this happening. In the last few months, President Trump, and yes, he's still president until at least January 20th, tried to delegitimize these mail-in ballots, saying they were fraudulent, made up, that the ballots would be lost, even before a single vote was cast. And as president, he could have submitted a bill to Congress to help fix it, but he didn't, seeming to make this a political strategy. He urged his voters to vote on election day, while Democratic voters, more worried about being infected, voted in huge numbers via mail or drop box. So of course, on election night, when the votes started to come in, Donald Trump took a huge lead because the election department started reporting votes that were counted in person on the machines on election day. Democrats were freaking out with haunting reminders of 2016. Let's go quickly over to Liliana Jimenez, host of the popular bilingual sports podcast, The Plan, who also co-hosted the election night watch party at Pinche Gringo Barbecue Warehouse. How are you, Liliana? How are you?
Hello, Dan. Thank you so much. I'm still nervous. There's so much excitement still because we don't know yet what is going to be the future of the United States.
I know, Liliana, it's crazy. Now, you co-hosted with me the event in the warehouse. What was the mood like in the restaurant? Like, how were people feeling on Tuesday night?
Everybody was like paying so much attention because there was a lot of numbers going on. It's supposed that maybe in that night we actually knew who's gonna be the next president, but no, it's Thursday and we still don't have no clue. There were a lot of Democratic people out there, cheering up and taking the best. They're having a quiet time, and even though there was kind of a trivia there and we learned a lot, even though we're seeing it was a very good time to relax, like relax our mind for so much numbers going on.
Right. I appreciated that you were doing some like meditation methods on the stage because it seems like people were pretty much going nuts. They felt like maybe this was back to 2016 again. Now, Ileana, my last question for you. This is the first time you've ever hosted or been a part of an election night party. As a Mexican, how did you feel about this experience? What was very different for you?
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult, for me, to try to put it on the same line because the politics in Mexico, it's quite different. When you vote, your vote count and that's it. But as far from the strategy that you use at the United States was so quite different, and for me it was very, very interesting right now to really learn to have this approachment. And I think now in this election, a lot of young people, a lot of Latinos and Mexican people have actually, the whole information and will learn a lot. So for me, in my personal opinion, it was very, very interesting because, the American people, they really know what they're talking about politics and they are so much into it. So for me, it was a good lesson. Like, okay, now in my country as a Mexican, maybe next time that we are going to be involved in election in my country, I will make sure to have the best knowledge and information as I learn from you guys.
That's great to hear, Ileana. I'm glad that we inspired you. Thank you so much, Ileana. Ileana Jimenez, the face of the NBA here in Mexico, and also host of the new podcast, The Plan. Check it out. It's really great, and we always love having you on, Ileana. All right. Well, so why doesn't Trump have the presidency right now? About what I was explaining before. So let me share with you. Votes for Biden were sitting inside these mail-in ballots that hadn't been fully counted in some states on election night. So for the last few days, these votes have been counted by hand, one by one, and the process is a slow one. but slowly Biden's votes have been trickling in, and Trump's lead has been getting smaller and smaller, which many think will eventually evaporate and give Biden the presidency, with the exception of Arizona, where Trump's slowly gaining ground. So the entire world is waiting for basically 4 states, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, to finish their counting so we can know who will be the next president. Of course, Trump is not going to admit defeat without a fight. He's been on Twitter constantly calling fraud. He's now starting to make lawsuits in the courts, even though there is almost no evidence at all of fraud happening anywhere in the country. Also, at 2:30 in the morning on Wednesday morning of election night, he made a speech at the White House in front of his supporters where he declared victory with absolutely no idea that he was going to win, basically undermining the democratic institutions in the process. He has asked the courts to order the election officials to stop counting the votes, but the counting is still taking place. At any moment, the news organizations can have enough data to say who has won, and so we wait. But Mexico, the US is supposed to be the example of a strong democracy? Really? Is that what we're experiencing? But now the presidential election wasn't the only election happening. The entire House of Representatives, 1/3 of the Senate, and most state houses were being contested on Tuesday. Democrats expected a huge blue wave and win in a landslide that did not happen. Actually, the Republicans gained seats in the House, and control of the Senate will most likely not be decided until January, but it is going to be an uphill battle for the party. With how the country is going, with more than 20% of all the world's COVID cases, and all of the other crazy things that has happened in the past 4 years, this is shocking. The polls did not predict this. And now as election data and exit polling is coming in, political analysts are trying to make sense of what happened. And as we've been reporting on the Gringo Show for at least the past month, a lot of what happened came down to the Latino vote. Latinos voted in overwhelmingly larger numbers for Donald Trump in 2020 than they did for him in 2016. And this is proving to be the difference in states like Nevada, Texas, Arizona, and Florida. Let's talk about Texas in particular and the Rio Grande Valley where McAllen is located. You know, the place where Regios go, buy crap for $5 and stuff it in the cars to hope they get past the inspection station on the border, bring it back to Monterrey, and poof, a Mexican city that looks and feels like Texas. Before you get mad at me, Regios, remember flour tortillas are kind of American, right? Don't get me wrong. I love them and I prefer them, but they're just not authentically Mexican. So let's go to Starr County, Texas, where I used to live, which actually is the closest town to Monterrey. In the 2016 election, voters chose Hillary Clinton by a 60% margin. In this election, the margin for Biden was just 5 points. This is insane. And the trend happened all over the country. Biden was expected to win Florida, but in Miami, Latinos, Cubans, who usually vote Republican, but also Colombians, Venezuelans, even Puerto Ricans went out in droves to support Donald Trump. The margin of victory was so low for Biden that he didn't get enough votes to put him over the top in the Sunshine State. We brought a number of analysts to the show to try to explain what was happening. This was anticipated, and there's so much to say about the Democratic Party taking Latino votes for granted, and people decided to take a stand. When we interviewed a Starr County resident on the show a few weeks ago, he had shared that his local leaders have let him down, and he was tired of it. Also, check this out.
So down here, we've been a one-party system. In the Rio Grande Valley, it's been a one-party system since Reconstruction, and the local party that is in charge has not been held accountable.
The local party has not been accountable, right? It's kind of interesting. Also, there has been widespread reports of a disinformation campaign in Spanish in a coordinated effort by possibly the Trump campaign, and also reports of the Russians getting involved as well. Virtually nothing was discussed in the campaign about Mexico, the relationship, what would be done, and Trump was particularly quiet the entire cycle. And except he invited President Andrés Manuel López Obrador to the White House over the summer. It was not enough to just have outreach or ads in Spanish. Voters felt neglected, and we're going to talk about this a lot in the coming weeks. But for more on this and more analysis of the election, we bring in member of the Mexican Council on Foreign Relations and frequent guest on the show, my favorite, Agustín Barrios Gómez, is with us. Agustín, how are you doing today?
Hey, Dan. Great to see you.
Augustine, what happened with Latinos? And I know you're saying that it's not just Latino, because Latino is a big swath, but the different groups of Latinos, because it seems that not only did they have an effect on the presidential election, potentially giving a big win to the man who disparaged them, takes a hard line on immigration, has policies to put Latino children in cages, forces people to live in slums on the border, and scares the bejesus out of suburban white people in 2018 with these migrant caravans. I can continue the whole damn night about this, yet he won their votes. Explain to me why he won their votes.
Well, to begin with, there's no such thing as the Latino vote. I think that Cuban Americans have been very, very different in all of their voting patterns since forever, because their ideas, I mean, their entire litmus test voting is based completely on politics in Cuba and what the different parties have with respect to Cuba, and that's all they vote for. And in this case, the Republicans were very effective. They went on Cuban radio in Miami, and they said that that Biden was the candidate of Castro Chavismo, and they said that basically Biden would take the United States the way that of the countries that they left. So it wasn't just the Cubans, but it was also the Venezuelans. So I don't think in this case you can really talk about the Latino vote. Now, you mentioned Starr County. I'll mention Zapata County. Zapata County, right on the border, which is a county that was actually represented by Senator Lloyd Benson. That was where he was from. He was from Zapata County, and he represented Texas many years, including when he was a candidate for vice president of the United States and for the Democrats. And Zapata County actually went for Donald John Trump. So a lot of very weird things happened on election day, and even though I think that there were a lot of very motivated Democratic voters, there seems to be a legion, an entire army of Republican voters that went out on election day in greater numbers than anybody had told the pollsters, who were basically wrong about pretty much everything, or at least everything that counts. So I think that those are the key things. Now, having said that, go over to California, and of course the Mexican American vote, which is very important there. Obviously, that went to the Democrats, and I think one of the points that was being made also was the fact that you've got a very large part of the Latino electorate, non-Cuban, of course, that is actually very young. And these are the people who are coming in to vote. And that's sort of the sleeping giant. Out of the entire, what is usually called the Latino vote, it is actually the youth vote that is the sleeping giant, because they are by far the largest minority in the United States in terms of Generation Z. And so that's when you're really going to see that difference kick in. But as for the Cubans, the old Cubans, they're still, they see the Democrats as socialist, and they want to run from them as fast as possible.
Right, and of course Trump did a lot of policies. This time, of course, there was an approval of aid for the Puerto Ricans, and he approved it just recently. The Cubans also, in his hardline stance against Castro, stopped Obama's policies. I mean, yep. And of course, his hardline on Maduro in Venezuela, even though they didn't overthrow him or do anything. And some people are saying that he didn't.
The economic sanctions.
Mm-hmm. That still is, but he didn't, because that still is a wedge issue that they really care about. So it seems like he was really doing that, but it doesn't seem like the right policies.
Yeah,
it's crazy, right?
Yeah, no, I think that, look, it makes perfect sense. I mean, and the person that had been working for him, the person that had been working for the president in the area of Latinos, actually left that position in 2018, and he was very forthright. He said everything that we did, every policy that was made with respect to Latin America specifically, not Mexico, because Mexico is not really a part of Latin America. It's intermestic. It's something much bigger and much different. But what usually is thought of as Latin America, especially places like Venezuela, everything that they did was just keeping in mind re-election, and that that was said by a former staffer. So you got to take him at his word, right?
Great. So let's talk more about the election. I know we had a little chat before this is going on, and you don't believe this is over. I think a lot of Democrats are pretty excited about this. They think that this is it, that, Biden is now within 1,900 votes of overtaking Donald Trump in Georgia, about 30,000 votes in Pennsylvania. It seems like that he's really coming in, but you're not so confident about that. Is that correct?
I think we have to be very, very, very careful with what's going on right now. Everything's on a knife edge. People's, the people are on the street. The current president of the United States is basically saying that the whole thing was a fraud. No, I would reserve my judgment until the states have actually declared the winner on their end. And remember that there's a very large process that goes on behind the scenes from November 3rd all the way through to January 20th. And there's a lot of things that still need to happen. You can imagine there being competing delegations arriving from the states to the House of Representatives. You can imagine all sorts of stuff going on. I would certainly not, by any stretch of the imagination, say that this is anywhere near over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm wondering if the Republicans will finally have this thing that they can abandon Trump because they know that, he's almost out. And it seems like that there are a lot of Republicans that are not gravitating towards him right now. And hopefully that would be it, that people would choose democracy over trying to be with somebody that is trying to take over power.
Well, we'll see. Up until November 3, it was very much his party and his party alone. The Republican Party doesn't really exist anymore. It's now a cult of personality, and that personality is Donald John Trump. I wouldn't underestimate what they could still do.
You're a former diputado, a former congressman here in Mexico. You've been involved in Mexican politics. I know you're not involved right now, but what is going on in Mexico? Is just kind of a wait and see things? Are there stuff happening behind the scenes in operation in preparing for what is about to happen?
Well, I mean, two things. One, I would actually highlight, and this is very important because I think Ileana was very gracious in talking about American democracy, but I actually would say that the United States has a lot to learn about holding an election from Mexico. The INE is one of the best organizations of its kind in the world. The results are in practically immediately. It's a federal election. It's one person, one vote. Unlike all of these, very baroque systems of channeling votes through states and through the Electoral College. So I would actually highlight the fact that Mexico has an incredible system, and it's worth every penny. It is a very expensive system, but it's a system that really has kept politicians honest.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it seems like that Mexico election system runs so much smoother, so much better, and it's a popular vote. I mean, it seems like that
much more professional.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
no, it's actually the most sophisticated electoral system in the world. I analyzed it, and in fact, when the Americans were doing the first elections in Iraq, they asked the then IFE to help them with that, and that's why I don't know if you remember those images with the indelible ink and all of that. That was all Mexican. That was all Mexican technology. That was all Mexican design. Why? Because we created a system that was based on mistrust. And so, everything is done based on redundancy, and it's done based on a random selection of 2 million normal everyday citizens who are trained before election day to actually run the elections. It's a spectacular system, and it's worth the billions of dollars that we've spent behind it. We need to protect it.
That's great. Well, maybe Mexico needs to teach the U.S. a thing or two, and I'm disappointed that there wasn't a huge Democratic sweep, because that's when change happens, when you have a full control, and it seems like that we're not going to know that until January.
Biden was up by 3.5 million in the popular vote the last I checked.
4 million, just surpassed 4 million tonight. It's
There you
pretty
go.
fascinating that Donald Trump can still win. But
That's a
Agustin,
lot of
I always
votes.
love having you on the show. Agustín Barrios Gómez, member of the Mexican Council on Foreign Relations.
Thanks,
Good
Dan.
friend. I know you're in the middle of nowhere, so I appreciate you coming out and supporting
I
us.
appreciate it, Dan. Take care.
Thanks. All right. Thanksgiving is just around the corner, and there is no more important Thanksgiving than this year, a time to give thanks to friends, loved ones, quarantine buddies, pets, including Harry the goldfish, who has been a great listener during these difficult months for me. Thank you, Harry. And now the question is, why do only Americans get to celebrate this holiday? It's not like people gather and talk about pilgrims and Native Americans. So we are going to make Thanksgiving a Mexican holiday. For more on that, let's go to the lovely Laylah Garciamora, Laylah, to talk more about this. Hi, Laylah. How are you?
I'm amazing, Dan, and you're going to be better after you receive Thanksgiving in a sandwich again.
Thanksgiving in a sandwich. Here it is. Thanksgiving in a sandwich. Oh, man. All right. First, let's tell us about Thanksgiving, Laylah. I know that people are a bit on edge, and what a better time to celebrate and be grateful for your friends and family and the people. But is it safe? Is it safe to be able to celebrate Thanksgiving this year? And how can you celebrate it safely with us?
Yes, you know that this is not our first Thanksgiving. We have been celebrating it for years, and we made like little adjustments. You can eat, please.
Thank you. I know you always don't like me eating in our meeting.
Don't worry, I'll keep talking until you finish your sandwich. That's going to be my show now. Okay, so we made little adjustments this year so people could choose which experience they want to have. We have different options. Like we have the traditional option of going to the venue. We're going to have the warehouse and the patio open from 11:30 a.m. to more or less 10 p.m. We have like all day of having people to eat our Thanksgiving plate. We have the option also of programming your order and getting it at home. We have options of packages for 4. We have options of full turkeys, full hams, like however you want to celebrate, we have it. You can go into our webpage, pgbbq.mx, and see all these options so you can choose. And if you need help or you need assistance, there is a WhatsApp button there that's a WhatsApp option. And our customer experience team is ready to talk to you, explain the options, and help you choose the best way to celebrate the Thanksgiving this year.
That's great, Laylah. And I think that if we have to go back into quarantine, I can just order a big turkey, put it under my bed, and just like all month, just pick at it, right?
Yeah, the weather is perfect to have a turkey under your bed. Like it's not going to go bad. And if you like ration it, you can go till Christmas. And then in Christmas, you get another turkey for yourself.
That's great. All right. Laylah Garciamora, commercial director and Pinche Gringo show correspondent. Love having you with us today, Laylah. And I'm going to enjoy my Thanksgiving in a sandwich. All right. Before we sign up for tonight, even though it's likely and maybe it's a great possibility that during this broadcast, Joe Biden has been declared the winner of this election. But even though the presidency and the control of the executive branch of the United States government is absolutely the biggest prize in this election cycle, the Democratic Party lost across the board in legislative elections from the states to the U.S. Congress. And why did this happen? Donald Trump and the Republican Party has been a disaster in handling the pandemic. They tried to take away affordable health care, stop immigration reform, align with dictators. Something weird is going on with Russia. The list goes on and on. The election should have been a landslide for Democrats, but it wasn't. And the party should look at itself in the mirror and have great introspection. There's so many complex issues to why almost 60 million people chose to stay with Trump and the party. But I want to tell you a story that could be one of the reasons why this happened. At this time, just a year ago, we were scheduled to host a political event at Pinche Gringo Barbecue. And as many of you know, we've created a cultural hub that offers more than just great ribs and brisket. It's a place for political discourse, for discussion about the issues. So we were contacted by Democrats to host an event for one of the presidential campaigns. We arranged everything, did some promotion, but then one staffer on this campaign probably went to Google Translate to find the literal meaning of the word pinche and probably comes out as the word fucking. Now, again, Mexicans know and understand that this is not that strong of a word. They know that pinche gringo is not offensive. It represents love and connection. But the campaign decided to cancel their event because they were afraid of backlash and offending people. Because are you really going to be offended? Will your soul be hurt if a restaurant is named Darn Gringo? Isn't there like a million other things that you should be offended about? World hunger, maybe one of them. Once I was at a gathering and I jokingly said that I'd love to have dreadlocks. And someone got really mad and said that I was culturally appropriating African Americans. What? And is this the problem? That this push by some for inclusiveness and more equality, all things that I support wholeheartedly, then turns into righteousness and then to shaming because somebody may not believe in those things or even say the right thing. Trump supporters were shunned, scolded, told they were inhumane, blocked on Facebook. And maybe we could do a little more listening to understand deeper what the gripe is. What are they talking about? What do they feel? And I'm guilty of that too. And where Latino voters basically just expected to fall in line and vote Democratic because Democrats are the righteous party, it proved in this election that that's not just enough. In this time of social media, people are hungry for authenticity. It seems that people want politicians who tell it like it is, who are brutally honest, who they can connect with, and someone who's not afraid that what they say or may not offend somebody. How many times have you heard a Trump supporter say, he tells it just like it is? And let's talk about momentum and excitement. During the last few weeks of the election, Donald Trump, just after getting COVID, ran around the entire country, having sometimes 5 rallies in the same day with roaring crowds of thousands of people. He worked hard. And yes, he probably put many people at risk of COVID. And reporters say that a few events were super spreaders. While Joe Biden played it safe, even some days not even having a rally, and others with cars honking their horns, wasn't the same thing. I'm not saying it's right what Trump did. But at the end, who had more momentum? And at the end, Trump almost pulled it off and almost had a win. So there needs to be a reckoning. And a thought is, in a party that prides itself in inclusiveness, is righteousness going against inclusiveness by making people feel shunned? Is this really why many Latinos decided against voting Democrat? So that's our show for this week. Stay tuned next week as we have one of the best shows of the season. Kuno Becker will be on the show to talk about the Latino vote. Also, we will have on Dr. Francisco Moreno on the show, one of the leading experts of respiratory diseases here in Mexico City. You will not want to miss it. Also, please subscribe to our Facebook page, YouTube channel, Twitter account, @Gringo Show for more clips, news, or anything else that deals with the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Mexico. Have a great night, everybody, and be safe.
Gringo, Mexico is laughing thanks to you. We like to watch you dance salsa and listen to your bad Spanish too. We like to watch you almost die from spicy food.